Assalamu alaikum girls. In this lecture I will again repeat to you few points regarding using direct approach for negative messages. Okay, a negative message using the direct approach opens with the bad news, proceeds to the reasons for the situation and decision, and ends with a positive statement aimed at maintaining a good relationship with the audience. Because ultimately, your prime goal is to have good relationship with your audience or customer. So depending on the circumstances, the message may also offer alternatives or a plan of action to fix the situation under the discussion. Stating the bad news at the beginning can have two advantages. It makes a shorter message possible, and number two, it allows the audience to reach the main idea of the message in less time. Number one point which we will discuss is opening with a clear statement of bad news. Okay, now what does it mean by opening with a clear statement? If you have chosen the direct approach to convey bad news, come right out and say it. However, if the news is likely to be devastating, maintain a calm professional tone that keeps the focus on the news and not on individual failures or other personal factors. Also, if necessary, remind the reader why you are writing. So these are the basic steps which you will take while stating bad news. Okay, and remember that your tone must be professional, being humble, polite, and you should avoid any type of devastating problem that can cause your message. Okay, that can cause harm for the audience as well as for the company. So you will explain it very carefully. Then the number two point, providing reasons and additional information. Okay, in most cases follow the direct opening with an explanation of why the news is negative. The extent of your explanation depends on the nature of the news and your relationship with the reader. For example, if you want to preserve a long standing relationship with an important customer, a detailed explanation could well be worth the extra effort such a message would require. However, you will encounter some situations in which explaining negative news is neither appropriate nor helpful. Should you apologize when delivering bad news? This is a question. The answer isn't quite as simple as one might think, partly because the notion of apology is hard to pin down. Okay, to some people, because to apologize for some reason, there must be two reasons or two concepts that are found in the people, or you can say there must be two exceptions. Okay, it simply means an expression of sympathy that something negative has happened to another person. At the other extreme, it means admitting fault and taking responsibility for specific compensating or corrections to atone for the mistake. ठीक है, तो ये जो दो रीजंस हैं फॉर अपोलॉजी, ठीक है, जिसमें आप अपनी या तो आप अपनी फॉल्ट एक्सेप्ट करते हो, उसके बाद आप जो है वो अपनी एक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी खुद पे लेते हो, ठीक है, फॉर कंपनसेशन. और द अदर वन क्या है कि ओनली टू गेन सिंपथी फॉर समथिंग नेगेटिव दैट हैज़ हैपन टू another persons. ठीक है, some experts contend that a company should never apologize even when it knows it is against it has made a mistake, right? As the apology might be taken as a confession of guilt that could be used against the company in a lawsuit. ठीक है, ये थोड़ा सा मतलब जो है डिफरेंट है इन बिजनेस राइटिंग में कि इफ़ अ कंपनी एक्सेप्ट और apology और शो हिज apology, ठीक है, तो देर कैन बी सम नेगेटिव इम्पैक्ट ऑन द company side. ठीक है, however several states have law that specifically prevent expressions of sympathy from being used as evidence of legal liability. The best general device in the event of a mistake or accident is to immediately and sincerely express sympathy and offer help if appropriate. Without admitting guilt, then seek the advice of your company's lawyers before elaborating. So these are the points which are also mentioned on 190, from page 195 to 196. You will also read the same points, then you will be able to understand. The next point is closing on a respectful note, that how you can close your apology, your negative message on respectful note. Okay, you close your message on respectful note, being as positive as you can be without being insincere, right ji? After you have explained the negative news, close the message in a manner that respects the impact the negative news is likely to have on the recipient. If appropriate, consider offering your readers an alternative solution if you can, and if doing so is a good use of your time, look for opportunities to include positive statements, but avoid creating false hopes and or writing in a way that seems to suggest that something negative didn't just happen to the recipient. Ending on a false positive can leave readers feeling disrespected, disregarded, or deceived. So this is all about the direct approach. Now we will discuss the indirect approach for negative message. You will use indirect approach when some discussion will help, when some preliminary discussion will help your audience accept your bad news. Okay, as noted earlier, the indirect approach helps readers prepare for the bad news by outlining the reasons for the situation before presenting the bad news itself. However, the indirect approach is not meant to be obscure bad news, delay it, or limit your responsibility. The purpose of this approach is to ease the blow and help readers accept the news. When done poorly, okay, when the bad news is shared poorly, the indirect approach can be disrespectful and even unethical. But when done well, means when it is delivered well, it is a good example of audience oriented communication crafted with the attention to both ethics and etiquette, showing consideration for the feelings of others, is never dishonest. Opening with a buffer, messages using the indirect approach open with a buffer, a neutral, non-controversial statement that is closely related to the point of the message. uh, Message but doesn't convey the bad news. Okay, depending on the circumstances, a good buffer can express your appreciation for being considered, assured the reader of your attention to the request, indicate your understanding of the reader's need, introduce. I have already mentioned that at any point you will never ever ignore the reader. Why? Because the reader or audience are very important for business message or for business communication, whether it is business communication or business message, whether positive or negative. So at every step, reader and audience are the most sensitive um, person for the company, right ji? So introduce the general subject matter or simply establish common ground with your readers. As good a good buffer also needs to be relevant and sincere. In contrast, a poorly buffer written buffer might trivialize the reader's concerns. Okay, so you will never trivialize the reader's concern. Your prior interest is your reader and your audience, so you have to be very careful, and you will avoid any type of triviality showing towards your reader while writing or using indirect approach. Divert attention from the problem with insincere flattery or irrelevant material, or mislead the reader into thinking your message actually contains good news. So these are the points. Again, you will read by yourself, then you will be able to understand them more clearly. The next point is providing reasons and additional information. So what is meant by providing reasons and additional informations? Build your reasoning in a way that signals the negative news ahead. Whenever possible, don't use company policy as the reason for the bad news. Well written reasons are detailed, tactful, personalized, unapologetic. If the writer is not at fault, as positive as possible. To convey bad news carefully, de-emphasize the bad news visually and grammatically. Use a conditional statement if appropriate. Tell what you did do not, uh, what you didn't do. Okay, an effective buffer serves as a transition to the next part of your message, in which you build up the explanations and information that will culminate in your negative news. As ideal explanation section leads readers to your conclusion before you can write out and say it, the reader has followed your line of reasoning and is ready for the answer. By giving your reasons effectively, you help maintain focus on the issues at hand and diffuse the emotions that always accompany significantly bad news. Okay, this paragraph does a good job for stating reasons for the refusal. It provides enough detail to logically support the refusal. It implies that the applicant is better off avoiding a position in which he or she might fail. It doesn't apologize for the decision because no one is at fault. It avoids negative personal statements such as you do not meet your requirements. Even valid, well thought out reasons won't convince every reader in every situation. But if you have done a good job of laying out your reasoning, then you have done everything you can to prepare the reader for the main idea, which is the negative news itself. Continue with the clear statement of bad news. Okay, girls, you will read these points carefully till page number 199. The last one point is closing on a respectful note. Okay, I will also read this from the book so that you people can understand, you can have a fair idea. As in the indirect approach, the close in the indirect approach offers an opportunity to emphasize your respect for your audience. Even though you have just delivered unpleasant news, express best wishes without ending on a falsely upbeat note. If you can find a positive angle that's meaningful to your audience, by all means consider adding it to your conclusion. However, don't try to pretend that the negative news didn't happen or that it won't affect the reader. Suggest alternative solutions if such information is available, and doing so is a good use of your time. You will also avoid an uncertain conclusion. You will manage future correspondence, express optimism if appropriate, and you will show also sincerity. Okay, avoid cliches that are insincere in view of the bad news. If you can't help, don't say. If you can be of any help, please contact us. So these kind of the wording or phrasing that you can use while writing negative messages. Okay, GL Hafiz. Again, once again, I would say you must make your points like MCQs so that people can learn them properly. Allah Hafiz.